Welcome to episode 41. Check out what we have in store for you this week. This is where we need sound effects, and I would be hitting some big old button like trying to get your attention, like flares, red alerts. I disagree.
You disagree? Really? Captain of the standard. To a certain extent, it drives me crazy when we're not.
I like that. So, Captain Standard.
Yes.
That's your new nickname.
That's right. I'll take that nickname. I love standardizing things. It is time for the High Tech Podcast. You're joined by myself, Josh Swartz. I'm a host here at the High Tech Podcast. Not new.
And me.
And Will.
William Illingworth.
Yeah, I was getting there.
This guy.
I had a flow. I was going.
Well,
I was getting there.
I'm sorry. I don't know. I just felt
I
like
always mentioned you.
I was going to introduce me. You were going to introduce you.
Yeah, we had a
like
thing
that.
going on. I don't know.
know.
This is fine. Here, let's do it again. You're joined by Josh. No, I'm just joking. I'm not going to do that again. So we're back another week, guys. High Tech Podcast. Super excited to be back working through the flow. Season 2, getting some episodes down where we're in the flow now. And super excited to have some more conversations about educational technology. This topic just keeps going on forever and ever.
We are certifiable nerds. Like,
Yeah.
if we like doing this,
We have a problem.
It's
fine.
done. Yeah.
It's okay. But you could have a problem with us and find us online. So just a reminder, every episode, if you're like, why do they keep mentioning this at the beginning of the episode in season 2? They never used to do this. And you know what? You're right. We didn't. And
no one followed
us.
us.
Shows. So we'd like you to follow us, okay? Not really because we just want more followers, but mainly because we actually want to talk to the people who listen to us and confirm that they're real. So check us out online. Again, our main social media is Twitter. We don't really do the Instagram or the Facebook. I don't know. I'm putting the in front of them like an 80-year-old person.
Who am I? Who am I to judge? That's how I say
all
all of
about doing
them.
TikTok, but then I realized, I don't like that. So, Twitter, check us out at High Tech Podcast. If you have a Twitter, make sure to follow, subscribe. We love talking to people online, so check us out there. You can also hit us up at inbox at hightechpod.us. And let us know what you think about the podcast. I think I made a joke in some of our other episodes. You can send us a recipe if you would like. I don't know. I feel like I need to add a new thing every time I say this. You know what I mean?
Like what to send us.
Yeah, like what to send us.
Know,
like send us a
types of
picture.
mail or...
Send us a picture of your cat. If you have a cat.
And honestly, that's going to be great, though, because if we just go in there one day and I open up the inbox and there's a cat, I'll be like, someone just listened to episode 42.
Yeah. So if you listen to episode
41, whatever episode this is.
We're on 41. If you're listening to episode 41 right now, I want you to immediately go to email inbox at hightechpod.us and send us a cat. That way we will know you listened to us. Okay?
We love it. That's your homework.
It's great. Yeah. I'm going to start
a
a new animal every episode now. From now on, so be prepped. Anyway, so you can check us out there. And then also, please check out our website, hightechpod.us. We've been doing this website for a while. If you listen to us on one of the major platforms like Google and Apple, you might not know this, but we do episode pages for each of our episodes. That's mainly focused around the app that we talk about during that episode. So like how to get started, what it does, how to jump into it. We kind of give some resources based off of what we found. So you can check that out there. And then also, always, if you don't know where to look for us, you can also go to anchor.fm/hightechpod. Chances are you already know where to listen to us. So that's not going to be super helpful because you're listening to us right now. But if you want to find us on other platforms or share it with a friend, Anchor is a great thing to do. So check us out there. With that spiel, it's time for Reading Rainbow. No, it's time for our episode. So what are we talking about this week, Will? What's on the docket? Conversation.
What should teacher professional development look like?
That's actually not true. It is.
Spoiler alert. That's next episode.
We just joked about this. It is, should we standardize online courses or not? I can't believe you just did it. That's hilarious. Well, folks, for those who don't know, I did this once during an episode in season 1. I started the wrong topic. Now, Will was a lot more polite about it and just went with it. And I just joked, I need to make sure. I
forgot about that.
Yeah, you just went with it. We recorded things out of order. It was a confusing night. But I just made a joke about that, doing that again, and Will just did it, and I think it's hilarious. So...
and the glory here is that we've been having a lot of work recently. Like we don't record in any significant timeline. Like, we just recorded episode 44 last week, which is 3 episodes ahead of this current episode, right?
We record all
so
over the
it
place.
can get a little messy in our heads, right? But one of the things that's become very evident to us is we fly by the seat of our pants. And the guests we've been talking to are much more prepared than we are.
I don't know if we just sound prepared, but if you're going to be a guest on our podcast, understand something. We're not nearly as prepared as you think we are.
This episode as our case study, exactly. So should we standardize online courses?
We know it's a question on all of your minds. I think, okay, some background on why this is a question we decided to address in the podcast is because I feel like online courses are the hot topic right now, especially with everything that's happening with COVID and life in general. Online courses kind of boomed to the forefront. They were always kind of popular, but I felt like a lot of institutions and faculty wanted to ignore that.
Well, and for a while it was just like a way for universities to make a lot of money. Now it's like the only way they can get people to take their classes.
Awkward. It's happening quite a lot. But that said, there's a conversation that always rises to the top when we're talking about online courses, and that is, should we standardize those courses? And so when Will and I are talking about standardization, there's a lot of different things we could be talking about. But I think really what it comes down to is, like, do we standardize the structure, what's put into those courses? Do we lock down those courses? Like, do we create what we call a master or a blueprint? And somebody designs that course, and then the course is the same way every time, no matter the instructor. Like, there's a lot of different levels to standardization, but I feel like that's kind of the big conversation.
To give us 2 poles, right? To give us opposite ends here real quick. You know, traditionally a classroom, every single classroom is going to be taught differently by that instructor. Even if 2 instructors are teaching the same course, they're going to teach it differently. Even if, even though they're using the same textbook, like their personality, their notes, how students ask questions, it's just going to be different. But when it comes to an online course, so much content that goes into the learning management system, or however they're delivering their online learning, is built, right? It's in a system. It's there. And so you can just copy and paste it every time. And so if you put those 2 things in opposite to one another, it's like one is complete chaos and could be anything. The other is completely ordered and you have to go through the same way every time. And no 2 classes are ever exactly that, right?
Yeah.
Almost every faculty member has to have a syllabus. Almost all of them use a course schedule of some sort, right? So there's not complete chaos.
There's already some standardization in the entity of courses. Like, there's schedules and a syllabus and learning outcomes, but it can take different shapes. And I think it's kind of the way I think it looks in the minds of faculty members or instructors a lot of times, or even students, is like, it's kind of a spectrum of rigidness. Like, how much flexibility do I have to make this my own and change stuff and do that type of thing? And so that's kind of, I think, the question we're asking. Should we standardize online courses? Now, I feel like I'm just going to be upfront about my answer, and this is my answer to this question. It depends. Like, you wanted like a clear yes or no, but the problem is that's too ridiculous. Like, you can't just say yes or no to should you standardize online courses. There's a billion factors going on. So let me give you an example from our perspective, right? So the institution I work at's been getting slightly bigger than when it first started. And I think we have some people who would like to do courses the way we did them when we had 4 students. And like, we can't do that. Like, we
4.
4. We can't do that. And so, like, we're pushing towards some more standardization. Why? Because we want to scale up the amount of programs that we're doing. And we can't do it the mom and pop way we used to do it. Like, you're just not going to be able to do it.
Right.
There has to be some standardization. And I feel like standardization is looked at in this negative light, but it's not negative necessarily. We're trying to standardize, not because we want to kill creativity, but because we're trying to create a understandable, like a good student experience. Like, we want learning to happen, but we also don't want it to be kind of all over the place for the student. Like, we don't want them to get from one course to the next and it be just like completely different expectations and a different flow, especially in online courses, because we found that a consistent flow and routine in online courses can really help students succeed because online courses can be very difficult to keep up with. And so like having a routine helps them to know what to expect each time they take their course.
Well, and something to address quickly on the point of standardization is like a lot of people are going to hear that word, and even some of the stuff we've been saying so far, and think like, wait, so is the course exactly the same every time it's launched? No, even the most standardized course is probably still going to have some differences from run to run. But something I do want to say about standardization is that some of it's really just like, oh, we came up with an issue the last time we ran it. Let's fix that. Right? So students couldn't get their accounts for a tool they're supposed to use correctly. Let's make a better tool or not require that tool. Like that becomes a standard that gets set.
Yeah.
It doesn't even just have to be the curriculum. Like, oh, we always teach chapter 3 in week 3 and we always teach chapter 9 in week 5. I don't know why you do that, but you know what I mean? Like that is a standardization element, and that is legitimate if you have a reason to do that. But other elements of standardization are the student should always introduce themselves in week 1. The students should be allowed to use audio, video, and text to submit certain assignments. Like those are standards that build into what it looks like to have a standardized course. It's not always just like you have to teach exactly the same thing every time. It's the setup of the course, the layout of the course, the sequence of the content, all of those things, or only one of those things, right? Any piece of it can be standardized.
Yeah. And it doesn't mean from course to course, like literally the content's can be exactly the same every time. It just means, I think it means that we kind of set standards for, I think in my opinion, for the structure and sometimes, layout and how we do the course. Like we have a standard layout and design to what we do the courses, and some instructors are like, well, I want to change that. And we say no, because your students need to know where to go when they're going in their course. It makes more sense for them to do that. Yeah. But like a good example, like we just standardized a learning sequence in courses. So like every week kind of has a similar learning sequence. And for some people that feels very just like cookie cutter and rigid. But part of the reason we did that is because we have a lot of instructors who online teaching might not be their first go-to. We have quick pace that we're moving at, and so we're trying to kind of build in as much as we can while we have to produce these courses quickly, a good sequence of learning throughout the week, and making sure that students can expect that same experience and that they can have some consistency in the way that they're learning, which then will help them better learn. Doesn't mean we want the instructor to literally say the same thing every week. Like they can have flexibility. They can adjust things as they see necessary. They may decide to add something in real quick because of something that came up with the students, or make another video and throw in an announcement because of an issue that's been coming over that week. That's fine. They're encouraged to do all of that stuff. We just ask them not to
be flexible.
Yeah, we just ask them not to, delete all of week 2 and, make up all their own stuff. So like that's a level of standardization. Now, I will say this. I think if you're in a smaller situation where you have less courses you're producing and people who are more experienced in online education, like doing online education, I think it's actually positive to have less standardization and allow them to do what they do well.
This is where we need sound effects, and I would be hitting some big old button like beep, 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 trying to get your attention, like flares, red alerts. I disagree.
You disagree, really?
I do disagree on that point. And here's at least an example of why. Like, and the whole point about the sound effects is like, oh, drama. He disagrees. I don't care. We don't need the sound effects. But I have someone who may very soon be a guest on the podcast who's in an educational program that gets the brunt end, the business end of the deal of a smaller institution that doesn't do standardization. I mean, you get weeks where these instructors don't launch the content.
Now, let me ask you a question. Hold on. Let me ask you a question. This is going to be a back and forth here for a second. How experienced are their instructors in online education?
Clearly not very.
Okay. See, so my 2 points were smaller institution and experienced people who know what they're doing.
If they had some standardized online programs, those instructors would be doing better over time. They would necessarily have to be better. But at this level, like the students are the ones emailing the instructors on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Like, when are you going to release the content?
100%. And see, those are the factors. Like I agree with you in this. The problem is those factors, like they have to go together. Like, you can't just be like,
Right.
oh, well, I have a smaller institution, but none of our people know how to teach online. I'm going to let them do whatever the heck they want. The problem is they don't know what to do. And like,
Right.
they don't
And they
know
don't
how
know
to get
what
it
they
set-
could do.
They don't know what they could do. They don't know how to get
They
it set
need
up.
help.
They're not used to doing that. They're not used to not having that face-to-face connection on a weekly basis where they can troubleshoot those problems. People forget how much troubleshooting between the instructor and the student happens when they have weekly classes. Like,
Oh, yeah.
there's so much that
Oh, yeah. I
happens
mean,
in those
how
weekly
many-
classes, and people don't realize that. They just think I put it online, it's just going to be the same experience. That's not the case.
Between the two of us, like, could we even guess at how many times we've showed up to class early or stayed late to ask a question?
Yeah.
I mean, think back to undergrad. I know I've done that. I know I've done that a lot because I had a question. I had something about an assignment. I want to show you something. Maybe it's just a personal chat, but like, there's so much of that actually happens in the face-to-face classroom that we just take for granted. Oh yeah, it's just class. I went to class. A kid walked up to me and he asked me a question. We don't make that a ticket. That's not a ticket like, oh, student submitted query. I processed query with level 2 SLA. That blah, blah, blah. Like, no. A kid walked up to me, asked a question, I answered the question, we moved on. And that happens in online education, but it happens at such a greater scale. And almost always there's a ticket behind every
there's
question.
some tracking.
So we know and we feel it, right?
And so maybe
we see it happen.
Maybe to your point, I need to like correct the way I go about this, because I think maybe the driving force is how experienced your faculty actually are at teaching online. Now, I think the size does matter. I think you can have a very large institution and great faculty at teaching online, and I think you probably still need to standardize a bit, because it's really easy for large institutions to lose track of where things are at.
I could think of one very large institution that's got a pretty rough online program, according to its reputation, if you know what I mean. No, but like, something else here, like, and I like that you're just speaking to the faculty element and the faculty experience, but I think the standardization should help make them better over time. And this is okay. So my answer, right, to the question, should we standardize online courses or not? I'm actually a pretty strong yes.
Okay.
For online education,
Yeah.
I believe that the content in the course, maybe even the curriculum, like what's taught and whatever, should be as standardized as possible so that the instructor has more time and space to engage the students in a virtual context,
okay.
right? There's so much time that gets lost to troubleshooting, fixing, uploading new PDFs. Oh, I have to get something, with alt text. No, do not do that stuff in the middle of the semester. Do all of that stuff, do all that building stuff before the course ever launches, so that week 1, you get to know your students. And week 2, you get to respond to their comments in the forums. And week 3, you get to send them personal messages. That's the value of the teacher in the online learning context. I was listening to a song this week that I love the lyrics. It's something effective. I grew up and I didn't know that YouTube was an option. Instead of, chasing all these grades, I could have been dealing in the comments and liking things. Like, the idea there, right, that instead of going to college, I could have just been liking videos on YouTube and reading. Like, no, that's not even what we want, but some people do that.
Yeah.
And even in education, some people just, like, watch the videos, and that's what they call learning. No, the teacher should be engaged. The students should be talking to the teacher. That's the real power of education. That's where teachers teach. And that's why the physical classroom is so powerful and has lasted as long as it has. But I believe, ironically, I think some people might see these things at odds, right? But if we standardize the course more, it leaves room, more space for the instructor to do what they should be doing, and that's teach.
Yeah. Listen, you're not going to get a lot of pushback from me in that area. Like, my response to it depends doesn't mean I'm opposed to standardization. Will knows this. I'm captain of the standard to a certain extent, and it drives me crazy when we're not. I like that. I just don't know how to process Will Illingworth hard pushing standardization. I'm like trying to figure this out right now.
Well, and here's another irony of it all. if I had my druthers for education, there'd be no standardization, just like blow it all up. But I know that in the system we have, there's an element of like, we need deliverables. We need to accomplish something on the end of this. And I think that to accomplish that, this is like one of the best systems to get there. Here's my caveat, I guess, right? Standardization is good, and I vote yes if there is time being put into those faculty to help them learn to engage their students, post in forums, do the things that I was just saying.
It's not viewed as like the course runs itself. There's not
exactly. If we standardize and the faculty just sit on the sidelines and give grades, that's scuba. That's the worst class it possibly could be. I don't want it, right?
And
do not let your
to your
faculty
point,
do
they're
that.
not opposed. Like I think a lot of times I'll see faculty kind of treat online. Well, there's all these videos that students watch, and but there's so much that you do by engaging in the forums that week, by giving feedback, by doing stuff, even like it seems small, but like the amount of times I'm just pulling teeth trying to get instructors to post announcements each week with your students and being clear, like look for the stuff they've been missing. Just like you would cover that in class, they can do that online and post that in there. It's not the same experience, but it's going to at least get the equivalent in the online area.
And it's valuable.
It is valuable.
It will make the difference
100%.
for your students.
And I think that's the point. The standardization can help lessen the amount of work, the other work that your instructors have to worry about when they're not standardized in that experience.
I did my master's degree online, and why maybe part of why I feel so strongly about this is a bias, of course, but like the classes and the teachers I remember are the ones who took the time to do that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
I can remember a couple of faculty like that didn't engage and do. I don't remember anything in those courses. Now, my learning design course where I had my program coordinator as the instructor and he really challenged me and he helped my group move. I remember what we did in that course and how we used Lucid Chart to do it. And I remember the feedback he gave me on our blueprint, right? And another one, like this whole, we were just talking about in our show notes, but there's a course we deal with this thing called Create. I remember everything about that course. I loved that course and how much it challenged me to think about discussion and challenged me to think about how we design interactions and activities. Another faculty member who built the course around Slack. I remember almost everything that we were trying to do in that course and why we did it. And yet, I don't remember everything from all my master's degree courses because I think there's still this level of engagement that a lot of faculty don't bring, even in a learning design master's degree.
Yeah.
Ironically.
Well, no, and there's not. And that's a whole other conversation in and of itself of the importance of engagement online. And we'll talk about that in a different episode because I just came up with the topic. But when it comes to standardization, I think the point we're getting at is that I think a lot of times people come to this conversation seeming that like standardization is the evil opposite of creativity and custom learning, and it's like it's not. It's the fact that you're standardizing the structure and content that's in the course so that the instructor then can come in and personalize it with their interactions and the way that they work with the students. And the problem is I think
put
people,
their blueprint on it,
especially in higher ed, get too focused on we need the content to be customized. We need the content to be the way I do it. We need the structure to be the way I do it. But at the end of the day, it's like really what matters is how much you engage with those students, and we need the content to be structured so that you can focus on it, and also so that the students get appropriately all get a good equal experience in the course, and so that it's not, students come in one semester and the course was horrible because the instructor forgot to publish half the things, but next semester he learned and he published them, but then forgot this thing, and that stuff matters. And to your, the person who's coming on our podcast eventually, that'll talk about this, like that can become distracting. I mean, you and I have made these jokes about like the amount of times. I mean, you remember you telling me there was a course you took, the syllabus, the course, and like something else all said different things about what the final project was.
The final project.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. And there was I ended up sending an email. There was 5 different sets of instructions in the entire course.
Yeah. And I just think like standardization can help us make sure that stuff doesn't happen. And I have people who like we have elements in courses where they have to like meet through Zoom in our online courses. Like we've been adding some more options that they can like connect in live settings to try to help encourage more connection. And I know people who want to like customize the way that looks in their singular course. And it's like, well, students, that doesn't actually benefit the student, because at the end of the day, the student then spends half their time trying to figure out what they're supposed to be doing for this activity, as opposed to they would just know if it was the same in every course.
That's a part of what we've talked about before and what Steve Muth gave us language for, right? Like, make the tool invisible. That is the opposite. You're making the tool very
You're trying to
visible.
Figure out what they want to do.
You're getting it in the way.
And sometimes I feel like it's customization for customization's sake, because you want to do a certain thing a certain way. And at the end of the day, I think, like, listen, I think there are certain circumstances where standardization doesn't have to be the way you go about with the course. I just think when it comes to online, well, you're pulling me over to the side. I was already sort of on the side, but I feel like I had to give a caveat. I think standardization most of the time is the way to go.
So, Captain Standard.
Yes.
That's your new nickname.
That's right. I'll take that nickname. I love standardizing things.
Here's my question to you. And I think I'm revealing my hand by asking the question. Should people be allowed an exception? Should we make a system for allowing people with good rationale to make the custom course?
So, I think I've come over to the view that at a program level, sure. At an individual course level, you better give me a solid argument for why you can't do the standard. Because I just, in my experience, and maybe this is the jaded part of me, when we make the exception, then everybody wants the exception for some reason. Like, to give you a good example, I'll just be blunt. I'm in a situation where we have standards, and the first 3 programs that are launching don't actually even follow all the standards that we have. Because they've all found exceptions. And listen, I love all the people, and they end up listening to this episode. I don't mean that I'm not making this in a negative. It's just that, like, I have had to create charts so my team understands
where things are
supposed to go.
Yeah. To track the exceptions.
Yeah, to track the exceptions. And at the end of the day, it's like, did some of those exceptions need to be made? Like, did we really need different late assignment policies for all of those different programs? Probably not. Like, I'm going to be honest. You may not like the standard late assignment policy to a certain extent, but is it really going to be detrimental to the entire education experience in your program if it's not the standard? I don't, that's my opinion. Now, I think in some cases when we're talking like smaller groupings of courses or like a very unique course it's not a part of a bigger program. It's not like, it's just a unique course with unique SLOs that have unique requirements, then sure, you can make those exceptions. I just think those exceptions need to be clearly tied to the learning outcomes. And I have had very few arguments that have really tied their exceptions to the learning outcomes. It's mainly been that you just don't like what the standard is. And I'm sorry. I'm trying to have consideration for you, but if you can't make an argument to me, so a good example would be we put standards in for external tools, like tools that can be used in courses. And you and I talk about this all the time because you're my tool guy. I often get a rep with some of our, acquaintances for not liking tools, even though I'm a technologist. I like tools, but I do think when it comes to online programming, we need standards and restrictions for how we use tools, because we don't want a student having to learn a new tool every stinking course they go into. I want them to have I always package it to people as an ecosystem. I want students to have an ecosystem that they can understand and know that they're going to possibly use.
That'd be so valuable to introduce them to in the first program class. Be like, these are the 10 tools you need to get through this program.
Yeah,
that would be so
I would
cool.
love for that to be the thing that we do. Now, we haven't gotten there yet. But we've put some standards in place. That said, if somebody came to me with a learning outcome that was I need a student to do this, and this tool fits the learning outcome perfectly, it meets that need, I would be willing to bypass our standard for that if we could find a way to make it work. And that was there was a unique case.
So I guess my point though, I'm with you. My question was, in a sense, do we have a system to accomplish that? Because on the other side, now it's just like you said, it's everybody coming and asking for their thing. It's no. I don't even want everybody to ask. I want you, instructor, to go review your outcomes and determine you cannot do something unless you have XYZ be different. And so then you can submit and say, here's my proof, on the form. Have you read this policy? Yes. Can you do? Yes. And then they can submit for an exception. But,
I think I think it's worth
Some-
building. I think it's worth building a system in place for it, because you know me, I also like systems.
Well, and I think it's more fair. You know what I
it's
mean? Because
more
then
fair.
everybody has the same gatekeeper, if you will, before
Yeah.
they get to you to get the chance.
And whatever that looks like, I think it depends on yours. Like, we're still trying to, I think, figure that out a bit. We had a system for doing stuff, and it worked for a while, and then some of the new stuff we've been doing, it's just, we kind of had to shut that system down. It wasn't making sense anymore.
Right.
And but I think it's worth it. Like, you need some type of place in that. You need a system, or else it's never going to end up happening. You're either just going to say no to everything, or you're going to get these weird haphazard ways of dealing with these issues. Like, you need a system in the standard for making those exceptions. Like, a good example would be some of the exceptions I've seen in standards that we've been implementing. There wasn't a system for it. So, like, people have just kind of haphazardly not followed certain standards. Like, and there, I still am not entirely sure why. Like, there's still part of me that doesn't know why they're not following them. Like, so...
Except that they didn't want to. Well, and so, like, my master's degree, like, I think that almost all of it was what I would call traditional. One or two courses, like, definitely a little weird. But there was one course that, like, if I had a program standard, which mine didn't, but if I had a program standard, this course, like, threw it out the window for a good reason. It was a studio course. And as a design, from a design standpoint, we actually had to go and create different things, right? We had to design something visually, a video. But this is the cool part. It was a choose your own adventure. You got to pick the 3 things that you did out of a list of like 6 or 7, and it was this whole like experience to do the course.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
you know what? For a studio course where you're supposed to design and create and showcase your work, that made sense. So, you know, like, we do have examples of ones that are successful and that deliver on what we're saying. But Josh and I think would, as I throw things around my office, Josh and I think agree to the fact that if we're going to have those exceptions, they need to be noted. And I hate to say it, maybe not controlled, but directed. Because when you go so off base from how everyone else is doing it, it does increase the difficulty for the learners.
Yeah.
And in an online environment, when you can't just go talk to somebody, quote unquote, anything that increases the difficulty for the learner is time, cost, and pain.
Yeah, and to put it into perspective, like, because I feel like, understandably, instructors don't always have this perspective. Like, okay, your student's taking your course, right? Let's just say you're in a, you know, education program, okay? And it's taking your course, right? Every other education course does this thing. I don't know what it is. Let's just say, like, structure. Like, let's say they all have the same sequence, or uses Google Docs. And you've decided you want to use Microsoft Word. And so they get to this one class. Now, let's just say they've had 3 classes that have used Google Docs. Now they're in your course, and you want them to use Microsoft Word. Unless you can give them a really good reason of why they should be using Microsoft Word in your course, it is going to seem like a pain, and it is going to be a pain point for a student that you're creating for, in my opinion, unless there's a good reason, for no reason. And so I think that's why you need a system in your standard to allow for exemptions, to make sense, but then also have a standard for how you judge those exemptions, and have a way for you to be able to say no if it does not meet those. Once you get that, I think you've got some of the creativity you want. And Will and I know this. We know we have similar connections to certain people that are like super anti-standard because they think I'm like trying to kill creativity. And it's not that. We're trying to make a better experience for students. We're trying to give consistency, and we're trying to make sure.
And for faculty.
And for
it
faculty.
should be better for you too.
It should be better for faculty. And at the end of the day, we're also designing learning experiences. And in these types of online environments, I do truly believe the consistency creates an ecosystem that better enhances learning and it better supports learning in certain areas, unless there's an outcome that really does need a unique solution. And in those cases, we have a system for making sure how we can process that and deal with that solution. And in those cases, that makes sense. So I feel like that's all we have to say. I feel like at this point on.
Well, I don't think this is too radical or anything.
Yeah.
I think that this is a pretty standard conversation in this field, right? Josh and I have both worked in this field, and he works in it currently. It's critical. But, you know, while it's not like tough for everybody to wrestle with. Sometimes that creativity thing is what makes the difference, can get some tempers flared. I just think that, at the end of the day, if we have the course that is standardized and it's effective, and the program that's standardized and effective, and people are learning better, and we see the grade point averages go up, and we see the tickets come down, isn't that pretty rad?
I mean, I think it's pretty rad. Speaking like my surfer days, I think it's pretty rad.
I don't know. I think it's like iorad almost.
I mean,
so rad.
If that was actually a word people use to describe it, I would agree. But it kind of sounds like an app that we want to talk about. That's called iorad. So I feel like you're trying to transition us to the app.
That's where
Is that what you're trying to do? Okay. Yeah. So obviously, iorad's not a word you use to describe cool things, but it is an app. That Will and I think are pretty cool, and we wanted to share, as we do in all our episodes in the High Tech Podcast. We always try to bring you new tools that you can use and check out, and I think iorad's pretty cool. Now, Will,
this tool,
what's iorad?
Though, a quick behind the scenes, as we are wont to do. This is definitely one of those tools, like some others that have been on the list, where I know about it, I put it on the list, I think it's great, and it just gets like a lukewarm reception, right? And then Josh makes an account. And then Josh tries it out. And then Josh is hooked. Yes. So that's my plea to you, listener. All right, we're going to give you in a second what it is, what it does. But if you're not sure, if you listen to these episodes, like, why do Will and Josh come up with a different tool every single time? Because they are good at doing what they do. I don't just suggest things or find these tools for fun. I mean, it is kind of fun. But,
yeah, it is fun.
These tools get it done. So what does iorad do?
Because we don't have to standardize our own courses right now while we're coming up with that. Yeah.
There are no standards in high tech, except that nobody's a sponsor and everything is permitted. Iorad is the ultimate tutorial tool. I mean, I don't know a better way to put it than that. What you do with iorad is it's got like a Chrome extension you can download on your computer and stuff too. But you turn it on, you hit record, and then you do something like logging into a platform or, showing how you do a video post in a discussion forum or how to download a specific software, right? So you want somebody to do that task and you use iorad, you turn it on, you hit record, and it records every click you make in the process of doing that process. Wow. In the process of doing that process.
There's a lot of processes going on this one.
And then you get a chance after recording it to go through and like tweak it and fix it and move it. And when the end product comes out, you send a link to your people, your students, whoever's trying to go through your tutorial, and they watch the video and they actually click through it with you step by step. So this isn't actually new technology. There's tons of tools. Josh and I have used and built content to do this before that do it too. This one does all the work for you. And that's the big change, right?
Yeah, it's with iorad. I think the thing that I was impressed about as we were testing out and using it is that there are other tools you can do this type of thing with, but it takes a lot of time, and you have to be people like me and Will, really, at the end of the day, to know how to get it set up. I mean, like it takes work. I mean, the Storyline does this. There's a tool we use all the time called Camtasia that we've never really talked about, ironically, and we probably should. But other tools you can do this stuff through, but it takes a lot of setup. And my biggest thing is I never end up doing them because the payoff is not worth it in my mind. Because if I need to revise it later down the road, it's not easy. And we just don't have time for that.
The biggest issue with video, typically, right, and these kind of video recordings, or here's a quick video tutorial of whatever you're trying to do, is websites change, user interfaces change, buttons move. And so if they change something at second 38 in your video, the whole video's done, right? Not with iorad. With iorad, since it captures everything from click to click, if one page changes in your sequence, you can go in and find where that page is in the sequences and delete it and re-record the new click step, right? So all the more powerful than Camtasia and all these other ones where you have to go in and edit the whole entire video. This, you just come back, find the slide, if you will, the click that was wrong, delete it, re-record that page, and your link still works. Like people can still go to that iorad link, and it's consistent. So for tutorials and help desks and stuff like that, you always just post one link, and that's where people go. Like that is
you always find
powerful.
it. Yeah, it's really powerful. Now, the point is like, okay, a lot of people may be asking, that's great, but why would I want to go do that? Why not just create, take some screenshots, do this? But this comes down to the learning piece for me. I've been really more convinced of this method, which is that at the end of the day, people are going to learn a lot better if they actually get to like practice in a low stakes environment what you're asking them to do. So for example, I can give you a 1.5-minute video on how to get to this certain thing. Let's say you're in a course from a teacher's perspective and you have a tool that you want to show your students how to use, and you didn't standardize your course. And so you don't have instructions on how to do that.
That's probably better than my transition puns.
Yeah,
like that referentiality. That's great.
Let's just referentially go that way. And you need to give instruction. Anyway, you want to do this. It's one thing I could provide a guide with 8 steps on how to do it, and somebody could try to follow it. But there's a certain extent where it's like, okay, I'm going to do this. Well, I forgot what step I should go to, and I'm going to open back up my guide. Or like a video. Give you a 1.5-minute video, watch the video. Oh, crap, well, I forgot what to do. Let me go back to the video.
What happened at second 35?
Second 35 or whatever. But if I can give like an iorad tutorial where it's like I'll start talking a little bit about how to do it, but then have them do the tutorial where they literally in the tutorial click through the process, even down to being able to actually type into things. Like I was doing an example of how to like add a new assignment to Canvas. iorad gave me the option. There's a step where you have to type in text, and I did that. iorad automatically kind of made a text box for the person so that in the tutorial they could type out a test into there and then go to the next step. What this is doing is allowing the person in a kind of guided way to go through the steps, so then when they go to actually do it, they've had some practice at where to go, where to look. They've had to make decisions on how to do that process on their own, but in kind of a guided process. And so
it's only at their pace, right? If they miss a step, or if they can't, they can stay on that page as long as they need to.
They can go back. They can go back through the stuff. They can find the steps again. It shows them when they're completed. It's also what I love about this is it's having them go through it, but then showing them the amount of steps they have to do. And so often what I would use iorad on a bigger scale for is like if I'm doing trainings on stuff, I'd probably like introduce something that they have to do. So let me say I'm like teaching instructors on how to add assignments into their course. I'd introduce why they need to do this, what they're doing here, then send them to an iorad tutorial where they actually have to like test doing it, like going out and doing like, go ahead and create an activity in this tutorial. Okay, great. And then I would take more training wheels off and actually send them out to do it. And so this is where you could use that. And it doesn't have to just be like step-by-step tutorials online, like how to click through apps. I think there's a lot of uses. If you are doing anything or showing anything in an internet platform, like on your computer, iorad can help you kind of create a tutorial for that in that space, make revisions, edit, embed, all that type of stuff.
I think why Josh and I think that this tool is so good for ed tech is like we just have so many things in education where we have to show students how to do something.
Yeah.
Right. And in online education, especially, you have to tell them, show them how to sign up for something, download something, even just how to complete an assignment. Like there's just a lot of showing that we can't do face to face. So we build instructions, we do Zoom meetings. Make an iorad. I literally will walk them through the steps, and that's the great win. But it's not necessarily an education tool. Like first and foremost, it's a tutorial tool. So it is educating. But like this is really popular in corporate where people have to do stuff according to procedures all the time, right? Like it's really popular in industry. So we're kind of thinking of a tool that might not necessarily like strike you at first, like, oh, why is that so education focused? If you have something to show your students in a sequence, you can use this tool. Yeah. That's it. It doesn't have to be downloading a tool or, like it can be anything. And if it's a 1, 2, 3, 4 sequence, iorad can show them.
And while they come from that corporate background, like there's plenty of places that I can see using this as a teacher. Like in an English course, you need to show people how to do certain MLA formatting in Word. Like iorad can help you do that. Like instead of having to explain 1 billion times how to do that or create 15 documents that go through the process, like just create an iorad so that the students can do it kind of in a guided way first and then go do it themselves. And I promise when you do that method, you find that they have less problems down the road with doing the process because they've had to go through and kind of in a kind of training wheel way go through this. And we talk about this, and this is, in my opinion, tied to a gamification principle, which is this idea of like showing, giving training wheels and showing people how to do certain things, but doing it in a way that they can actually try doing it, like learning and trial and error in a low stakes way. Like that's not that crazy. And like iorad can help you do that. And so I think that's why. So I think like those of you listening, if you're a teacher, instructor, you need to show students how to do something, iorad's great for you, especially if you work in fields like Will and I do, where you have to create training content a lot of times for other instructors and faculty members. Check out iorad. I've already got like 15 uses in my head of how I would use iorad. I think my favorite thing is it embeds in other places. So I already have thoughts about how this could embed into our guides and courses. So I think that's what I'm really excited about with the way it works.
Even better, as usual, this is a freemium product, so $0 a month. Access our free tutorial builder forever, create public-only tutorials, use the multi-mode player, and more. It's pretty straightforward for the free side. I think the number one limitation there is you can create public-only tutorials. So if you had any sort of sensitive or confidential kind of stuff, you would need to pay up to use those private features. But for the stuff Josh and I are talking about, like tutorials on how to do something, like 9.9 out of 10 times, you're not going to show a student's name or, sensitive data while you're doing that. So you would be able to create a tutorial on how to download specific software, even if it's specific to your institution. It doesn't matter if it's public. Nobody else is going to care because they can't get into your institution to download the software, right? Like as long as you don't show names and data, you're fine.
Yeah, you're good.
But once you go up to the education plans, it's not too bad. I'd like it to be a little cheaper, maybe, but $10 a month for teachers. That's not bad, really, when it comes to some of the
institutions. They have like of course, their advertisement of like up to 80% off, but it looks like they're willing to do like bigger scale stuff if you're able to do it with education. I think the fact that they have an education plan as somebody who's corporate focused is actually interesting and very positive. I will say this, like with the plans, like if I was going to use this on a bigger scale, I would want one of the plans. Only because there's a lot of stuff you don't get access to in the free feature beyond just the tutorials. Like I don't know if you saw this, Will, but like if you do the pay version, there's a system for doing revisions, like not just editing the steps like we were talking about. There's actually like a revision feature where you can go in and do planned revisions.
So you can project manage your tutorials.
You can project manage. There's like tags, analytics. The admin side in me is nerding out right now. There's a lot of stuff that you can do with this. They have they have translations. With in there and like a drafting feature. So
that's fantastic.
I would probably end up doing the paid feature if I was going to do that. But that said, the free version you can do, like we were creating tutorials already in the free version. So if you're interested in it, check it out. If you're only going to use it for like just your course or whatever, I think the free version is plenty. But they do have education plans, so make sure to check that out. And nonprofit stuff too. If you're in a nonprofit area, they have some nonprofit or options as well that you could leverage. So.
All right, folks, we'll wrap it up there. This has been another episode of the High Tech Podcast. We do hope that if you enjoy this, as always, you'll follow us on Twitter. Send us those emails, especially the pictures of cats. Head over to our website. Make sure you check out the resources. We build it for free. We build it for you. We want you to use these tools, so we hope that you use those pages to get there. Of course, please share the anchor.fm/hightechpod website link with your friends so they can follow along as well. Next episode 42. This time, for the correct announcement, we will be talking about what should teacher PD look like next to episode 42. And the app Calendly. So we look forward to that. Until then, continue working with us to harness technology in both the physical and digital classroom. See ya.
See ya.